Arkansas Community College in El Dorado, and I started there about 5 years ago. And the institutional research director grabbed me and asked me to start doing a little, just start to do a little bit of work in Excel. She wanted to see what I knew and started showing me things. And I was in institutional research up until April of this last year, when my boss moved to academics, and I followed her. And but I still use Excel all the time. And so I learned a lot messing with a lot of data at the college because of the institutional research area. So just want to let you know that. I've also taught some Excel for corporate ed at South Ark as well. And I teach a lot to our coworkers. I've had quite a few classes I've taught them. So I get called all the time about little techniques, people asking how to do something quicker, and that's what I try to do. So okay, I guess I'll start off by sharing my screen. Hopefully this goes well. Here we go.
Yeah, I think I enabled everyone can share the screen now, especially you.
Okay, awesome.
There
All
we
right,
go.
Can y'all see my screen?
Looks good.
Everything? Okay, good, awesome. Okay, so this is similar to the Excel spreadsheet that you have. The page which you have has this is the one you should be able to see. Oh no, it says pause. Hang on. I guess it's because it's looking at the other one. It's very similar. This looks just like the first page that you have, but you have multiple pages that you're using on your Excel spreadsheet. And so you can kind of go along with what I'm doing. I just took off all the instructions on the one I'm working on, so we can kind of go slowly through it. So some of the things I wanted to show first, you all know, what a row and a column are, and how to mess with the fonts and stuff like that. But I do want to show some really basic formulas or functions. And I'm going to start off by saying that I interchange the word formula and functions. Some people might be picky about that, but a function is a formula that's already set in Excel. So to me, it's the same thing. So when I say formula or function, just go with it, please.
Hey, Mary Kate.
Yes.
When I opened, I downloaded the file, and it's telling me security warning, external data connections have been disabled, enable content. Normally I would say, yeah, because I'm not as security conscious as you are. Is it okay to click enable content?
Yeah. I guess that's just because you're downloading.
Do you have macros in here, or?
I shouldn't.
Yeah, I'm not. Well, like I said, I'm not nearly as security conscious. Since it came from you, I'll trust it. Say enable content. So if y'all see that,
yeah, I did not. Yeah, it should be fine. I will say that there are, so a lot of the sheets on there came from a training that I had done with someone taught me some things through a program, and so I use those sheets because it's a lot of interesting data that can be used and manipulated. So it might have been that they had a macro in it, but I've never had any issues with it.
It may just be me. I use OneDrive, and it anyway.
Okay.
Good to go. I'll hush now.
You're fine. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk about are conditional formulas. Those formulas are ones that like if this item, if I'm gonna look, let's start with sum if. Okay, let's just start with that. So if I'm looking at this set of information here, doing that. Hang on a second. Of course, now I'm trying to click on stuff and things are going crazy. Let me. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened there. I will just use this. So let me reshare. Of course, like I said, something was going to mess up today, wasn't it? So here we go. Okay, we'll just use this. So with sum if, what it is it's an if then type question. So if you're wanting to find the sum of the sales, but you only want to look at the sales that might be more than 15,000 instead of all of the sales, then you can start with this formula. I'll show you. You'll do equals sum if And if you notice, it'll start showing you what to say next. So you'll do the entire range of the area that you're looking to sum. Okay. And then comma. And then your criteria. So your criteria, let's say if you want to say greater than 15,000, you would do greater than 15,000. And then in this situation, you don't have to add anything else. So you'll end it with the parentheses and enter. So what it's doing is it's only adding up all the cells that are greater than 15,000. You can do the same with average if. You'll do equals average if, and you can choose it. I usually hit tab, that's my personal choice. I'd highlight everything, or if you want to type it in, you can do that. Then comma, let's say the average obviously is going to be a little bit different. So let's say greater than 1,500 and end it. Oops, sorry, I forgot the quotation marks. You do have to have quotation marks around the item. So another way of doing sum ifs or average ifs or a function is to actually go up to the formula tab at the top and go to insert function. So I'm going to go back down here at the bottom and show you how to go that route. So that was me entering it by hand, but you can also look for it. So you can type in the sum if in this search, hit go, and you have two options. The first one is one criteria. The second one is multiple criterias. So we're just going to do with the one criteria. And then it goes through what you're wanting to do. So if for some reason you've not used this specific function very often, it's not something you're comfortable with, a lot of times it's easier to use a function box, the box, that kind of way of doing it that way instead of typing it in, because it walks you through exactly what you need it to do. So, you know, what's the range? It tells you the range is the cells you want it evaluated. It walks you through exactly how you want it to be, what you need to do. The criteria is the condition or criteria, the form of a number, expression, or text that defines which cells will be added. And you can do it different ways. So you can do a greater than, equals to, you can say does not include. So one of the things I wanted to show y'all is what is does not include. And that is, of course, the arrows back and forth to each other. Does not, you know, you could also do equals. So if it only equals, you know, 23,000, and then hit OK, and then you get an answer. What's the cell? And that's the only one that happens to equal exactly 23,000. So same thing with the averages. You can choose the insert function option and change it to the other one. Does anybody have any questions about that specific area yet? Okay. All right. So another good helpful one I like to use is COUNTIF. So sometimes you're just trying to find out how many of one thing is in an area in a column. So I've created this column here that just says yes and no's. You could also do a column of specific letters or check marks or, you know, anything like that. But what you're doing is you're going to count exactly how many yeses or how many no's. And I mean that is you're counting it without using another form of a formula or another type of situation. Like you could use a pivot table to do things like this too, which we're going to get to in the future. But this is just a quick way of doing it. So we're going to go down here and we'll do insert function this way. We're going to do COUNTIF. There's our COUNTIF, hit OK. COUNTIF range. Okay, and then the criteria will be yes. And then it's going to give you the count of how many yeses are in that range. You could do the same thing with no, but that's a really helpful, to me, it's helpful depending on what you're working on. Sometimes you just need to know exactly that specific item, how many yeses or how many nos. Same thing with count blank and count A. Let me show you that one. Those are some optional ones too. Show you. Count A is counts of the number of cells in a range that are not empty. So if for some reason you have a whole bunch of rows full of information, but then you also have some blanks in there, that'll tell you that, as well as you can look at it a couple of different ways. Count blank is how many cells in that specific column are actually blank. So related to that, you could also highlight the column itself and look over here at the bottom, towards the bottom of the screen. It'll tell you the count. If you have it set up right, this is where it talks about what you can have down there at the bottom. If you have it set up right, you can also choose numerical count. And if you have numbers, it'll only look at how many items are numerical. So there are 39 in what I just highlighted, but there's only 38 actual numbers. So if you didn't know that, that is something that's very, very easy to use, as well as it shows the average of those numbers or the sum. That helps a lot of people that I know of. When I show them that, they're like, oh, I didn't know that was there. So that's very nice. Okay, let's go over COUNTIF one more time. We're going to look at the state area. So I'm going to go down here at the bottom and do E equals COUNTIF in the range. We're going to comma, and we're going to do CA for California and see how many California states are available on that list. And we have 5. And I hope y'all can see that. If for some reason you can't see what I'm looking at, please let me know. I have a really big monitor, so hopefully it's coming across okay. Okay. Another helpful function is to, let's see. We're going to insert a column here. We're going to move everything to the right. I'm actually going to delete all of this information. So does anybody have any, like I said, does anybody have any questions about those specific conditional formulas? The sum if, average if, count if? Okay. All right, so the next thing, one of the helpful things that I use is a concatenate function. I use it a lot because sometimes we'll have first names and last names by themselves and I need to add them together, cities or states. These are easy additions and that helps. So one thing you would do is you'll go to the column next to the item that you're working on. And my idea is to add New York, the city and the state together and put a comma between them. And so I'm going to do equals the cell that I want to add, the and sign, quotation with a comma and quotation and an and. So any item that we're adding in there that is not a cell number, you have to put quotations around it, okay? And then I'm going to put a space. So quote, space, quote, and then the and sign, and then the state, okay? Hit enter. And then if it's not filtered, you can double click and drop it down, okay? Now, another version of this that could work here is if you don't want to do that and everything is set up just right, add another row to the right. You should be able to type it in, comma, New York. And, oh, that's not what I meant to do, sorry. And it should automatically, you should be able to, let's see, is it control? I think it's control E. Oh, no. I'll have to work on that one. There's a function that you can do that will drop it all the way down, but it's not working on that one. So I'm sorry. I thought it has to be set up just right to do it right, and I didn't do it. But anyways, with this, you can do the concatenate, which is the item there. Did it work?
Yeah, Paul, did you like double click on the fill handle and it just wham, just did it? Oh.
Sometimes it works for other people better than it does to me. Usually it happens when I'm trying to teach. Okay. Paul, did you just double click on it? Okay, good. Well, good. I'm glad it worked for you. It happens to me all the time. Perfect. Well, that gives you two options there. If it's set up right and you use it exactly, you set it up just right, then you can drop it down like that.
Hey, Mary Kate,
But,
one thing
yes.
I couldn't recall the official term for it, and I forgot to look it up. What do you call the little square? Is that the fill handle? What do you call that little square that you drag around?
I think it's called it's like quick fill or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't really know what it's called. I always say the little square at the bottom
corner. It's the
corner.
little square you drag
down.
around. I know. Yeah. I think it's called the fill handle. I
this
think.
Is the auto. I know it pops up like this and does auto fill options, and then you can auto fill it, or but yeah.
I'm gonna Google it real quick here.
I'm not very good with specific terms. I never have been with anything I do. That should probably tell you something. So that should help y'all with that. Another thing, I was trying to think related to dragging. Like I said, if you have anything filtered, make sure you drag it. Try not to double click on that autofill option. If you double click on it and it's filtered, what happens is it could really mess up all your filter, like all your items. So be careful with that.
Fill handle.
It is the fill handle.
The fill handle.
The fill handle. That's good to know. So that so I wanted to make sure y'all knew how to do that. Now, related to other drag items, if you so let's say I am wanting to do one. If I let's say I want to do a group of numbers in order. If I wanted to do a group of number in order, of course it does it wrong there. That doesn't always happen. What I try to do is I have at least 2 or 3 of what I want it to do. So if I want to do 1, 2, 3, it'll do all the way in order. If I only want it to do 1, I'll do at least 2 rows of 1s and drag. Because a lot of times what happens if you don't do 2 rows and then drag, it'll actually do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Same thing with yeses and nos. If you do a yes, it probably won't do this now that I'm saying this. See, it's dragging it like that, but usually what happens is it'll say yes, no, kind of like, nope, it did it wrong there. It must be how I have this set up. I must have it set up not to do it. Sorry about that. But anyways, yeah, so just to be careful with your items, if you're trying to drag a whole bunch of the same things down or have it repetitive in a certain way, just be careful and watch yourself, and usually make 2 of the same columns the same before you do it. Now, I hope that makes sense. So like I said, if I wanted 1s everywhere, I would do 1s 2 rows before I pull it down. Because if not, it will start trying to do an autofill type thing. Okay, so I do have another thing that's kind of neat is there are multiple date functions that are available. So let's say you're working on a project and you want to update a time and date every time you work on that file. You can actually just take a cell and type in equals now, tab it over, and that will pull up the date and time exactly at the moment, and it'll update all the time. So it updates constantly. As you do something else, it'll change it to the regular, the current time of that time. So basically it's just equals now, and there you go. If you're wanting to find out the number of days between 2 dates, one thing you can do is we're going to use the dates on the left here. I'm going to insert the column, move it to the right. We're going to do today's date, insert another column. And I know, and one thing I like to say and remind people when I'm teaching Excel is there are multiple ways to do everything. So I might be doing things differently than what you do on a regular basis or what you know how to do, but this is just how I do it. And of course, everything, it doesn't mean anybody's wrong. That's the cool thing about Excel. There's so many options to do the same thing. So today's date, I'm going to do 11/9/2021. And this might do what I was talking about earlier. Yeah, so if you notice, because I didn't copy and paste another of the same number or retype it, it's already starting to add the dates up. So we'll type it in and then choose both those. And yeah, I could have double clicked on that one because I don't have it filtered. And then we're going to use the date formula. So I want to insert the function just so we could show y'all that. Oops, sorry, it's date. Got to spell right. Hit OK, date, and then hit OK. Oh, that's not what I was. That wasn't what I was expecting it was to do. Hang on a second. Date. Oh, I guess it was. Number of days between dates. Oh, days. I was looking for the word days. I'm sorry. That's what I was confused about. Days. Okay. So end date, comma, start date. So today's date and then the beginning date. That's what I was looking for. I apologize. And of course, because I inserted a column next to date, the number is going to pop up date. This is another thing to learn. Obviously, you're not wanting to look at a date, but you're wanting to get a number. So the entire row, we're going to update that. I'm going to go to home and change the formatting to number or general. I'm just going to change it to general. And we're going to drag down, double click or drag down the formula. And those are how many days are between the dates. So if it pops up an actual day of a date, then you know it's wrong. You have to change it to either general or number because you're not looking for a date, you're looking for a number. So, okay. Another item like that is network days. That's kind of neat. You can actually choose like 2 dates and then how many Monday through Fridays are there, which is how many work days there are. And if you want, you can include how many holidays. So like if you know how many holidays are in a year, you type that number in there as well. So equals network days. And that's a US version. So you'll do a start date, comma, today's date, comma, and if you knew how many holidays there were, you can add that and it would fix that for you in the column. And then, so that's how you know it's right, because the differences, between those dates with Saturday and Sundays, it's higher number obviously than a work day. So those are nice to have as options depending on what you're looking at. And then one thing I use a lot of is dated if. Dated if will return how many years. Inserting another column there to the right. So with working out of college, we have to know how old a student is to put it in some data, just to group our ages of our students. And so, but dated if is interesting. It is one that, hang on, equals dated if. It is one that it does not really choose. It's not really in the system anymore. So it doesn't actually pull up and say anything. So you actually have to choose your information properly. So it's the start date, comma, end date, comma, and then years or months would be M, or days would be D. So it's an old function or old formula that they just don't keep in there anymore. So this person, if this was a birth date, this person would be 26 years old today. Same thing with this one. This one would be 22, or that's how long that person's been working here, 26 years, 22 years, 20 years, etc.
Something's not updated. Ah, there it went. I was still seeing that 1990 or 1900
sorry.
for a little. There you go.
Taking a bit. Sorry about that. So yeah, so that's one that might be helpful, but like I said, it doesn't walk you through it. Something Excel like stopped using it. I guess it's there, but it's not like the other ones will walk you through. So you have to know it's the start date, the end date, and then the year, month, or day, and you have to put those in parentheses. I mean, in quotation marks. Sorry. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay.
Doing good.
This is
I know
going a little faster than I thought.
I know. Well, it's hard because you wonder if your microphone is on when you say
Right.
any questions, anyone? Am I alone in here? These folks all know what you're going through or what we are going through.
Y'all are all busy people. Okay.
And I'm just needy, so I'll just make them. Somebody come off the microphone and tell me I'm not alone in the world.
All right, I'm gonna pull that off. All right. Okay. So let me think. The next thing I'm going to do is we're going to talk about logical functions. So if y'all don't have any questions about any of the conditional formulas, the dates, the concatenate functions, I'm trying to think if there's any other tricks I could show related to those things. I don't have any notes for that, so I'm going to go with probably not. But some logical functions.
Mary Kate, I just wanted to make a point. What in this course, guys, you have heard me say I keep a Google window open. I can't remember. There's too many ways to do things. Like, for example, the ampersand is the concatenate symbol in Excel. But you can just, as we have seen in Python, if you want to print, last name plus first name, or last name plus comma space first name, you just put a plus sign in between. And if it's a string data type, it knows that is the concatenation symbol. And I think it's something else in SQL, which we'll cover in the coming weeks. So yeah, I just there's so many different formats and different languages. Don't be dismayed if you need a Google window open to remember how any of this stuff works or the name of the different function, because as you start working with a lot of these different tools, there's just so many different ways between them to do the same thing that unless you're working with it constantly, you'll be Googling constantly.
Right. I do agree with that. That was one of the things I wanted to mention too as well today, because the dated if thing is something I only use like twice a year. And every time I have to look it up and figure out which date goes first and how to do it. So I completely agree. I was also going to say, so I was on Instagram the other day, and all these reels that are coming through, these videos all the time now. There's an Excel dictionary Instagram account, and she is awesome. She does really quick videos of different things. So if you have Instagram, look up Excel dictionary, and just look through and see the different random things that she is showing that you can do with simple things. Like I was thinking about something the other day, and I was like, oh yeah, I could have done it that way instead of this other way that I do all my stuff. But yeah, Google is your friend. Use it with Excel, because there's no way that you're going to know everything that you're working with. So I'm going to go over the if function. If is one that says if this, then it will be true or false. So if the commission is, greater than 1700, this one would be true. So let's just look at that real quick. Insert. I'm going to move it over a little bit so y'all can see a little bit better. So if is equals if, of course, it's simple. This is greater than 1500. Let's say 15,000, comma. And then I can say, sorry. Actually, it's gonna be this. Yeah, this is greater than 15,000. I think I'm doing this right. Sorry, I'm trying to keep up with the value of true. Let's see.
So you could say like good job or high earner.
Yeah,
or,
I was gonna say, let me do it this way. And then we'll just do it like that. Okay. And then we'll just drag that down and it'll say, of course, this one's not greater than 1500, so it says false. And yes, you can do it different ways. You can say, do better, or bad, great job. And then false is like do better or something, you know. Yeah, obviously you don't want to be a negative person anyways, but there you go. And you can reword it. Okay. So if it's just an if then. So if this happens, then this the true could be this and false could be this. Okay. So another version is doing and. It will provide a true false statement as well, type thing. So equals and this greater than 15,000, sorry. And then it'll actually, that's where I got it confused. I get the if and true and ors mixed up. So the ands or the ors will give you a true or false word, and you don't have the option of the wording. So, and this one's that way. You could also do comma. You can do a second logical function. So, and the commission is greater than 3. Oops, sorry. Hang on. It should be that way. What is that? Sorry. There it goes. I guess it just didn't like how I did it. So it's bigger than 1500 and then it's greater than 3. This is less than 1500, so it's false. So did you see how I did that? So you'd have 2. So both options. So greater than 1500 commission, greater than 3 on the other part. Okay. So that's an and you can do the same thing with or. Basically the same logical idea there. So it would be one or the other on that one. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay. All right. So those are just some I wanted to show you, just because they could be helpful depending on what you're working on, especially if you're trying to find things that are wrong in a group of cells, or trying to help somebody figure out what's the right way to go on certain things. I'm going to go to this audit formula tab. So one of the things that you can do that a lot of people don't think about is you can actually audit your formulas and figure out what, if something's wrong. Like, so if you get an error and you're not really sure why you got an error, especially when you have a spreadsheet that might be full of different information, and it might be that spreadsheet takes you from one column to another spreadsheet to another workbook maybe, and it's hard to find where your error is. There's a way to audit your formulas. So in this situation, it's right here in front of us, so it's not that hard. We can look up here and go B11 and C18. Well, C18 is nothing. So obviously there's a problem there. However, but if, like I said, if you had a spreadsheet that was full of different formulas or was pulling from different spreadsheets and different workbooks, it would be easier to audit the formula than it is to just look at what it says on the exact cell. So we're going to go up to formulas. The tab formulas at the very top. So like I said, I'm on the, if you have the file open and you're working from your own computer as well, I'm in the audit formulas tab. You'll go up to formula tab at the very top. And then there's a couple of things. We can trace our precedent. So you're on the actual audit, the actual formula it's messed up, and you can trace where the items are. So that's kind of neat. If there's an error in, so I mean an arrow in, so it shows you the B11 and it shows you the C18 that this is referring to. It makes it quicker to see. So you know that there's a problem, obviously, because the division of a C18 is not going to work with nothing there. You can remove your arrows by clicking remove arrows. You can click anywhere on the screen and choose error checking. So when you click error checking, a box shows up and it tells you what the error is. It finds whatever the closest error is. So if you have multiple errors, you'll start with one and you'll go to the next one. Okay. So it goes to the first one and it tells you what the actual cell, the error is in there. If you have questions about how to fix the error, you can click help. You can show calculation steps. So this shows you what it's calculating. So the B11, which is 4,500, and then there's a zero, nothing there, that's a zero. So it's showing you that, which is a problem, obviously. You can evaluate that, and that's what it ends up, which is the actual error. You can you can ignore the error. If you're like, that's actually what I want it to do, you can ignore it. You can also edit, so it tells you exactly what it looks like. What I normally do at this point, if I was going to go look at it this way, I would just drag that red box. Well, that didn't work the way I wanted to. Resume, edit. You can drag the red box to the number you want it to be. So I just grabbed the red box and dragged it down. Resume, and it should be fixed. And it'll pop up, the error check is complete for the entire sheet. Or it'll say, this is the next error. So like I said, in this situation, that's an easy one. We could have done it by looking. But if you had a spreadsheet full of data, full of errors, full of formulas, it's very helpful to use that error checking tool to see. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay.
That's way cool.
Oh, sorry.
I never saw that before.
You spoke.
Thank you.
It is an interesting thing when I started. That's not something I use because I don't use a lot of formulas when I work. But when I was learning what to teach classes, that was pretty neat. I thought that was really neat to learn. It could be definitely helpful depending on what you're working on. So the next thing I have is validate data. I don't know if you've ever worked with validating data, but when people have Excel spreadsheets and you send them to someone to work on, if it's your baby, your Excel spreadsheet, you hope that they are using it properly and filling out the information properly if they're having to fill in information. So in this situation, like state, state needs to be 2 letters, or it needs to be the entire state name. In this situation, we're using the 2 letters. Hopefully they only put 2 letters, but you can create a data validation type thing that makes it where if they put more than 2 letters, then it throws a warning up, like a warning box, and makes them go, oh, I shouldn't have put that 3rd letter there. Same thing with dates. You can make it where it's only a date in the column. You can also make it where the number has to be above a certain number or below. So I'm just kind of show you how that kind of works. If you go to data, the data column at the top. You'll see over here to the right, and I do apologize if you have a different version of Excel. I know that's one of the hardest things is working when someone has a different version, but there should be a data tool area, and it should say data validation or remove duplicates, that kind of thing. So data validation, we're gonna use data valid. You're gonna do the drop down and click data validation. And we're gonna highlight our group first, sorry. It's one of those things I have to remember. So I'm gonna highlight the entire column, and then I'm gonna go a little bit further so then you can actually see what it looks like if I add something I shouldn't. So I'm gonna click on data validation and our settings. So allow, this is what we're allowing. We're wanting to set it to a certain text length because we're doing the states. So text length. We want it to be less than 3. We don't want it to be more than 3. We don't want it to be, if that makes sense. So I would say less than 3 is what we allow. And then a warning will be 3 and above, of course. So we are allowing the text length of less than, maximum is 3. Okay. So of course you have to think your way through what you're actually needing to put into the settings. Now, then you click over to input message, and you can actually put an input message. So as that person is typing into that cell, it could pop up something that says something at the side. So we could put remember only 2 letters. Okay. And then error alert is, so you have an option. You can either throw a warning, so you still let them write, so still type 3 letters if they want to. You can force them to stop. It will not allow them to do more than 2 letters at all. You can just provide information, which is kind of the same type of thing. It like pops up a little thing to the side. So in this situation, we're just going to throw a warning. And you can do a error message, which is only 2 letters, exclamation point, and then you can click OK. And as you can see, we've clicked on the cell and it's giving me an information note. Remember, only 2 letters, okay? So we're down here in a blank cell. Remember, only 2 letters, okay? It's still telling me that. Let's put Arkansas, AR, and let's add a K because everybody likes to make Arkansas ARK. And when you hit enter, it's now telling me there's a warning, only 2 letters. Do I want to continue or do I want to, work or do I want to stop? Continue, yes. So that's a warning, meaning, like I said, it's not going to keep me from doing it. It's just going to warn me. Now, if we did the same thing, go back up to data validation and change it to stop and hit OK. Let's do ARK. Enter, only 2 letters. And at this point, now it's you either retry and fix what you're doing, or that's it, or it races off of it. So hit cancel. So that's a cool little technique you can do to annoy people, as well as get your information correct on your spreadsheet you're creating if you're wanting people to add information to it. Related to the same thing, you can also circle invalid data. So if there's a data validation set up, you can actually circle it. So back up here, you can see there's a thing that here it says circle invalid data. Click it, and you should only have 1, and it should be the ARK that was a warning, and it warned me. So that's a really cool, different thing too. Has anybody ever used that before?
I have not. I just let people just go wild and put in all kinds of garbage data, and then I tell them move.
Same here. I've never really used it. So anybody else?
That might help. So coming up on a break when you're at
yes.
the
right. Oh yes, go ahead. We can take a break. I'm sorry, I got going on that one. So
That's okay.
I think we're good. We could take a break.
Okay.
Sorry
How
about
about
that.
9:30 cell phone time? Reconvene, and I'll come on and say welcome back.
Awesome.
9:30.
Thank you. I was going to ask, do we want to try to do, are y'all okay with doing a little bit of practice, or do we want to just keep going and then practice later? Does anybody have an opinion about that? I could stop and do a little practice right now. Y'all could work on a little bit on for yourselves.
I'll let the group
John?
decide. Y'all come off mute and how you want to tackle this.
I'm good with just keep going through it.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Well, we'll do that then. All right. Okay. All right. So the next part I want to show y'all is one thing I use a ton, and that is text to columns. It is a way to separate information in your columns as much as you want in different ways. So I'm going to start with, let's see, I'm trying to think of a good one. We'll just do this one. This is fun. So we'll insert a column between name and city. And actually, I'm going to insert 2 columns. And what I try to do is I insert more than expected, because sometimes when you separate out your information in your columns, you have things in there that might go over onto another column that you're unprepared for. So if you have more columns than you're expecting to separate, it'll protect you from erasing your information on another set of columns. So the idea is you're taking this column here and you're going to separate the information inside of it. So we're going to take John and Cleese and separate them out. Let's see. So you're going to go to the data tab at the top, and then usually it's in the middle or to the right, there's something that's called text to columns. So I'm going to highlight all of this first. And usually I would highlight the whole column, but since I have information at the top, that's not happening this time. So we're going to go to text to columns, and there's different ways of doing this. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips. One thing is, if you use the delimited version, I highly recommend that you remember a couple of things. If you use the delimited version and you separate out columns and you open another Excel spreadsheet and you paste a lot of randomness, and this could be in 5 hours, but if this Excel spreadsheet's still open while you're working on that new one, when you go to paste, it will sometimes delimit that information out into the page. And what that means is if you have a whole bunch of information, you're going to paste it into another spreadsheet, another workbook, and you still have this one open, the one you use the delimited text to columns information on, it will sometimes paste it where it's delimited. So what I always recommend is, if you're going to be messing with other spreadsheets, save what you've just done, close out, and then go back to it. And then you won't have that weird thing floating between Excel. I don't even know what that's called, but it does it randomly, and it's very annoying when you're not expecting it. So we're going to click delimited. This is the first way we're going to do this. And we're going to click next. And in delimited, what it's doing is it's looking at something specific and separating that information out by that specific item. So down here is your preview of what you're going to be looking at. So if it had a semicolon, you could click semicolon. If it has a comma, you can click comma. If it just has a space, you can remove comma and keep the comma in there and have it separate out the space. So that's where the separation is going to match. In this situation, we don't need the comma. So I'm going to choose the comma over the space. Okay. And then also, so that's what I'm going to choose. Now you can also choose other items. You can make your own. So if it had like an and sign or a plus sign or anything like that weird, you could choose that other and it would change it there. So we're going to click next. This is where, if you have numbers, this is this is important, this part is. If it's letters, to me, it's not as big of a deal if it's names or words. But if you have numbers and you need things to keep the leading zero or items like that, you need to make that decision here, what you need. So in this case, both of them are words, don't really need anything special. But let's say I had, in our situation, section numbers for a class. Section numbers are 3 numbers, and the first number is usually a 0. And so we usually will I will click on one part and then click text to hold that leading 0 in place. Okay. If you wanted to save it make it a date, you would click date, etc. You'd format it the way you need to. Okay. All right. So no changes there. So we'll just click finish, and they have separated out those really quickly. Super easy. The only thing about this one is it separates it out. It doesn't keep the original column. Okay. So there's that. Now, if we go back and we decided to do it a different way, let's, this will not look pretty if we do this, but I'm going to show you. Text the columns again, and let's do fixed width. Fixed width, what it does is you put a line in at a specific point. You can have multiple points and you'd have multiple columns. Okay. So where you put that line is where it's going to split. This would be more useful for numbers. Okay. So if you had multiple, especially like a set of data numbers all around, when we send things into the state, we have a ton of information lined up. And if we're trying to separate it out, that's what we would use, is a specific set of numbers separated out. So if we did that, I'm going to go back. And you can double click to take the triangle line off. So you're double click on them. If you add them and then want to remove them, you can.
We talked about that briefly, Mary Kate.
Oh, good.
The concept of a fixed
yes,
fixed length
fixed width yes.
field.
Yes.
Yeah, and the state particularly using, when you're reporting the results for scholarships or any of that sort of thing, they like these fixed length fields.
Yes, definitely.
So there you go.
So on this one, like I said, it'll separate out where right there. It's not what I would want in this situation, because obviously it's not separating out the names properly, but I wanted you to see how that worked in case you hadn't. So let's do the sales that way. I will say you can also, when you're bringing in, like let's say you have a text file and you're bringing it in Excel, if you know your fixed width field, you can actually put that in as how it separates out when it pulls in, instead of you having to do this later. So just remember that if that's a part of what you do. And I can show that if anybody's interested, just put it in the comments, and I'll add that to one of the things I talk about. So I'm going to insert a field here, and I'm going to show you with numbers so you do see that. And like he said here, he might have already did a little bit, but I'm going to continue to do a little bit more. It is a very helpful feature to do text to columns. And remember that leading 0 I talked about? Let's keep it as a text, the second group, hit finish, and it'll keep those zeros. So anybody have questions about that? And like I said, the only one I worry about, I have this happen to me all the time, is if you use limited and you're working in other Excel spreadsheets, make sure you're careful about that, or you'll be mad at yourself. Usually it's yourself, it's not someone else. So, okay, all right, so there's that. One thing I get asked about randomly is, hey, I don't like how my data is set up. Can I rearrange it? And you might know this, and a lot of people do, some people don't. But when you have data that looks like this, let's say you want to change it and make it look the other way, you can highlight all of it, copy, and paste as a transposed, which is, where is it? Right there. So transpose posting, and then it pastes like that. Real quick, if that's just changing around the data real quickly for you. And then of course you can just delete the columns, I mean the other rows. Has anybody not ever done that before or shocked about that?
Never done that before.
It's pretty helpful if you know you want your data to look the opposite, but if you don't know it, then it's not really helpful. Related to that, since we're talking about that's a different paste option, I'm going to go over paste options real quick, if that's okay. Sometimes we don't think about that there are options of different types of ways to paste things. So, oops, sorry. On home, if you instead, or you can right click either way. If you decide to right click, it pops up in your little thing here. But one of the things I like to do, depending on what I'm working on, I hover over to see what it looks like. I have to paste values a lot because when you're looking at formulas and functions on changing things, I don't like my data to change. So once I get done with the values, I always copy and paste those back into place with the actual values and not the formula. But that's because what I need is not the formula. So if you're trying to add a lot of data together and have a sum of something and you need how you did it, then you want to keep it. But in my case, most of my items that I do is like adding the names together or things like that, or doing VLOOKUPs and stuff like that. So things that we don't need the formula in there anymore. So you'll have to think about what you need and what you don't need before you make that decision. But of course, if you're just copying everything over, you would use formulas, you can transpose items, you can copy just the formatting, which is an iffy thing. It doesn't always work properly. You can paste it as a link. You can paste a picture, which would really throw off. If you really wanted to pick on a coworker, you could paste a picture of your information and make it look perfect, and then they won't be able to mess with it. I was reading that on something, so there's a little tip there. And paste special. It talks about all that here, but if you ever get to a point, you know, like skip blanks and paste things, you might want to just look into what all this means and what all the options you have are. Excel has a ton of different paste options, so just be aware that there are options and think about that when you're pasting. Okay, so filtering and sorting. So I'm going to show you a little bit about filtering. I'm going to delete these columns here. Delete. Okay. So I think you said, Don, that y'all talked a little bit about filtering. Normally when I work on a set of information, I do not have instructions at the top. I'm one of those that prefers to have my table all the way to the top to the corner to A1. So then I can work with a little bit easier. But so the headers are here on row 29. And to filter, there are a couple of options. I use the home tab, but I'm going to show you both ways. On the home tab over to the right in the editing box area, there's an item that says sort and filter. Click it and then click filter and the little boxes pop up. Okay. Now, another thing to help if you are not aware of this, and like I said, I don't know exactly how much you all know, so I'm just trying to go over some things that help me, is when you highlight your entire area, your entire table, let's say it doesn't look right, you can go to format and auto fit column width, and it'll format it and make it look a little bit better and easy to read. Also, that relates to if you have a ton of number signs. So if you have a column that looks kind of like this, that probably means your column just needs to be bigger. So start with widening your column to get rid of that. If it doesn't get rid of it after you've gone pretty big, then I would say you have a problem with your formula and how it's looking. Okay. It could be how it's formatted related to the general formatting, or it could be there's a formula in there that needs to be looked at. So don't forget, if you see a whole bunch of numbers, just start widening your column and that will probably fix your situation.
And
And
Mary
you
Kate,
might have to, yes, sorry, go ahead.
We've only talked about sort and filter tangentially. Yeah, I showed them how to
Good word.
turn their their data into a table. So to make the sort and filter boxes come up.
Easier.
I've shown them how you highlight your data and they say insert table, and then
And do table.
it's a little more magic. I mean,
Yes.
Excel's a little more smart when it knows the data is in a table versus just out there in a sheet. That's all
Yes, definitely.
I've covered.
Oh, okay, cool. So yes, and so since you've learned a little bit about that, I'm not going to show you a table version. But you can do either way. Like I said, there are people have different preferences, and so at this point, this group of information is in a table is filtered. And over here, there are some options where it says sort and filter. There are options. If you filter something and you want all of your filters turned, like open back up where you have all your data back, you come back to this sort and filter area and hit clear. Don't go to clear. If you go to clear, it clears your information. Okay, so go to the sort and filter where the filter button is, and the clear button will pop up when you have filtered too much or whenever you're filtering. Okay. So let's say I want to filter for the state of Arkansas only. So I've gone to the state, clicked the filter button, and chosen unselected all, and chosen the actual state I want to choose. Okay, hit OK, shows me which one I have, and there you go. Let's say I want to choose multiple states, and I'm looking at these four in the middle. That's what I wanted to choose: California, Connecticut, Florida, and Idaho. And I'll hit OK. You'll see all of those. Let's say I want to go down, I want to filter it even more, and I want to look at only those that have 5% commission. So unselect all and click 5 and hit OK. Okay, now I have 2 filters on. So if I need to remove those filters and look at all the data again, I'd have to, there's 2 ways. I could go through and look at each column and unfilter. However, if you're looking at a ton of data and you're filtering a lot, you can forget a filter, and that is where you mess up. Okay, so you don't want to do that. So you'll come back over to the sort and filter box, click it, and hit clear. Okay, and it releases the entire filter. Now, the biggest thing with filtering, I've learned a couple of things when teaching people this. I did not know people thought that when you filter, the data disappears. That's not true. It just kind of hides at that moment and then unhides. So please remember, filtering does not get rid of the data. It actually is still there. So don't try to send a filtered data or anything private hidden or filtered, because that's not how this works. It doesn't disappear. It's still there. And then also, if you are not paying attention and you're working on trying to figure out some things, you might leave things filtered or unfiltered too much and try to start back over. So be aware of what you're filtering and think about your processes while you're doing it. Okay. So I'm going to go over a couple more things with that, staying with filtering, and then we'll move to sorting. There are tons of options with filtering. So since we're looking at numbers here, kind of the whole greater than less than thing, we're going to filter the sales using number filters. You see all these options right here? It's really useful when you have a ton of data. I'm only looking for specific, or I'm looking at does not equals, or greater than, or less than, all that, or in between. The top 10, you click top 10, the top 10 items, hit OK, it'll pop it up. It'll be the highest 10, obviously. Clear the sales, start over. Above average, you could do a custom, let's say less than. And when you click any of those, let's say you don't know exactly what you're wanting, you can drop down and do equals, does not equals, is greater than, etc. This is one I forget about, and I've started using it more because there's a lot, you can click a ton when you're looking at numbers. And in this situation, that helps you. If you know what you're looking for, and you're looking for, let's see, is greater than 15,000, and then hit OK. Perfect. All of those are greater than 15,000. And let's say you could filter again. Let's do commission here and say less than 800, and then hit OK, and that's filtered again. So those number filter options are really, really nice to use, depending on what you're working on. Okay. So I'm clearing my filters at the location site. If I'm worried about that, and go back up here and then see if that clear button is on, if it's red and marked with an X, that means there's a filter out there somewhere. So please just be aware of that. Okay. Okay, same thing with date. You can filter dates. So when you're looking at filters, these are, if everything is dated, it is all formatted properly. Dates can be formatted so many different ways, and this includes related to state type files. They're usually year, month, day, the numbers, all that with no slashes in there. And sometimes if you type it in or you format it that way, it changes what Excel looks at like. And when you go to look at the column, when you look at the filter, it doesn't look like a date. It looks like numbers, or it thinks it's a date, or it doesn't think it's a date. So in this situation, this is actually looking at it per date, and you can go down to the actual date itself. So you can choose filters that way. You can choose exactly which day you're wanting to look at or not look at. You can use a date filter, which is similar to the number filter we were just looking at. So last quarter, this quarter, years, last year, year to date. Those are kind of neat if you're working with a lot of dates, especially if you're working on something that you're supposed to be looking at something only in a specific time frame. So that's super helpful. So I wanted you to see that. Another part to a lot of this is, one thing I use filtering for is if I'm putting together a bunch of data and I am going through everything and I'm looking through here and I see a blank, that's a problem, because my data should all be looking together and there should not be a blank. That means there's a row there that has some issues. So I'll unselect all, go all the way to the bottom, click blanks and hit OK. And then try to figure out why that's blank. Or you can type in blank. Gonna pop up. So one other thing here is you cannot, so like, let's say another part to the filtering. Filtering seems to be simple, but there's so many options you can do. So another part to the filtering is if you're wanting to look for a specific number, like we use student IDs. And so I need to look for that student ID very carefully. I will copy that student ID with the Control-C, go to the filter. You cannot right click, you have to Control-V and paste it, okay? If you have a lot of data, a ton of data, sometimes it will not be able to search for it because you have so much. So that's an issue with filtering sometimes. Sometimes you just have to have to use find and select to look for the item on the actual spreadsheet. But most of the time you should be able to paste and look for that item in that column, or paste it onto the search area of that. That's another thing, like if I'm doing a formula and I have an NA, it pops up just like a blank. It's at the bottom of it. I'm just typing that in so we know. Here we go. Perfect. I'll unselect all, go to the bottom, click at NAs, and then I'll look at those. Okay. So that's filtering options. Does anybody have any questions about the filter options, not the sorting, but just filter? Okay.
Well, I had something I was unable to do. If you filter a data set like this, or filter a table, and then select it and paste it, you only get what you filtered in the paste, right? There's no way to select it all and then
supposed
accidentally.
To, yes, that is correct. That is correct. It usually, I'm not going to say always, usually if you filter, copy and paste, it should only paste what you filtered.
What you filtered. There you go.
Right. But that would be something I would definitely make sure happened. Like I said, you don't want to send someone something you're not supposed to be sending them. So once you paste it in the other spot, I would double check. But
Yeah, it appears to be that way. So just, heads up, if you thought you were pasting like a copy of your original data set, but there's a filter active, you're not getting the whole data set. You're getting a filtered data set.
Right. It should be that way. That's right. Yeah.
Beware. Cool.
Yeah, beware. Yeah. I always say double check your work in Excel because you never know what might have just happened. Okay. So let's talk about sorting. I'm gonna back up a little bit and fix those NAs and those blanks I done. So I have my stuff. Okay. So let's talk about sorting. So with sorting, you can do a couple of things. You can sort the table that is filtered. So these items, and that's another thing, you want to make sure that you're filtering the entire area. So either do one of two things. As Don showed you, format it into a table is one option, or second option, you highlight the entire top row, the row of the table that you're working on, and make sure that is filtered. If that is filtered, if you do it that way, what happens is it grabs everything that has something in it. Okay. This is just because we've moved stuff over. But if you don't do that and you accidentally only highlight these and forget this column, then you're messing up your data. So please make sure you're careful about that. So because these are filtered, you can sort from this area. Now, the hard thing is you're only sorting that information. You can only sort each column. How do I say this? You're looking at each column individually. So it's sorting it properly with everything, but you can't look at it multiple items to sort at the same time, if that makes sense. So like if I want to sort here, I can do A to Z and it's going to sort that way. If I want to sort the opposite, it'll sort the opposite. So another thing I like to do is sometimes, let's do this. I'm going to do a number filter less than 15,000. And I'm going to highlight these. Okay. So another filter option you can do and sort option is you can filter by color or sort by color too. So if for some reason you're like me and use a lot of highlighting depending on what you're working on, green for yeah, it's right, yellow for no, you got to go back and fix, or red for remove, that's what I do. You can do the highlighted color, and then there's also an option if you have font color changes. You can, there it goes. You can sort by font color. So you see there how that popped up? That's filtering in this part. Same thing with the sorting. It gives you the same option. So let's say I sort by yellow, all the yellows go up the top. Or I could do the opposite, sort by blanks. Okay, so those are cool little options. Same thing. So that's what you can do. So you can pretty much do the same sort type thing as you can for filtering in the actual column area of the filter option. Okay. So related to that, we're going to highlight the information from the columns. By the way, I don't know if you know this, if you highlight an area of the table, so I'm highlighting those and I want to go down to the bottom of the table, Control Shift arrow down takes you all the way and highlights all of it. Now, if you do like I did earlier, where I was like on a blank column and I did it, it takes you way too far. So don't do that all the time. So it takes you down to the next blank line, which is the 68. Okay. All right, we're going to go over here to sort and filter. We're going to click it and we're going to do a custom sort. The custom sort lets you do multiple sorting options. So it's this, then this, then this, then this, then this. So let's just practice. Just kind of want to show you a couple of options here. And I'm going to try to keep up with my time. So, all right. So let's say we're going to sort by the state. We're going to do A to Z. And then let's say we're going to sort by the commission. And we're going to do largest to smallest. And another one is still employed. We're going to sort by still employed. Still employed is, so if we did A to Z on still employed, it would show no and then yes. Okay. But I want to correct that to be what I want it to be. Okay. So in this case, it's only two. Yeah, A to Z one way or Z to A the other way. However, you can choose what your stuff is in order of. So you click the A to Z button and then choose custom list. You add your list entry here. So let's say I want yes first, then no. And then if you also had like NA or maybe or anything like that, whatever the order you want it to be in, you would add it that way. And you can also, once you add it, you can reverse the order if you want to in the system. So I'm going to add yes, no, and hit add, and then hit OK. And then it shows right here that that's the order I want it in. And then I'm going to add another level and add the sales, but I want let's do date. Date of employment. But I want it to be the cell color. Remember I said that there's the options of formatting it, sorting by color. So cell color, you choose the cell color you want. So if you had multiple colors, it would have all those colors come on there. And then you would choose where that color one would be. Would it be on top? Would it be on the bottom? That kind of thing. So let's say yellow, and let's say that one's going to be on the bottom. Okay, so you can continue doing that. Now the problem is you have to know what you're wanting to do, because the more you do this, the more it's just kind of getting jumbled. Okay, but right now the state's going to be A to Z. Commission is going to be largest to smallest. Still employed is going to be yes to no. And date of employment will be the yellow will be at the bottom. Okay, so it'll be all together like that. Okay, so we're going to hit OK and let it run its stuff, and then it's ran it. Now obviously you're only going to do this if it's important to what you're doing. Most of the time you're going to have one or two options that change. And of course, if you see, I did not highlight past outside of here, so it did not grab these. So that's another trick. You got to be careful. Any questions about that?
Yeah, can you go over how to put that highlighting option in your sort again, please?
Sure, yes. Oh, thank you for asking a question. That makes me feel good. All right, so highlighting the whole thing again. Let me get all of it.
I'm on the table with the sort and I have all of the filters that you had in, but under the order, I just couldn't figure out how to put that highlight option in.
Okay, so if you're using the date of employment, then you'll go over to the sort on, and it chooses cell color or font color.
Okay.
And then you would choose your color to the right. Another thing is if you have conditional formatting, which I'm going to show you that in a few minutes, what that is. If none of you've done that, that's another option you can sort as well.
The only thing that's coming up for me is automatic. It's not letting me select that.
Did you highlight them?
Yes.
You did. Okay. So you went to filter, and it looks like this.
Yes, it does. It just it says no cell color.
Well, everybody has the option to share.
Do you want to share? Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Sure.
I'll stop sharing mine, and then you can try.
Can you see mine?
Yeah. Okay. It's because yeah, you'll have to highlight those. So hit OK for me real quick. Okay, and then go up to like 29, 30, 31 and click the rows to the left. Row 29, 30, highlight those together, go down, and then just highlight a few, not all of them, just a few.
Okay.
That's what it is you just don't have anything highlighted.
Okay.
So you'll actually have to go to your paint option in the font area over to your left and right under the 14.
Sorry, let me move
the little paint bucket underneath the 14. There you go. Click that. Okay. And now go back to your sort and filter.
Okay.
And then that should give you that option. Try cell color. There you go.
Perfect. Okay.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You see, Mary Kate, you're not alone out there.
Someone spoke to me.
We are all listening and paying attention.
How do I stop sharing my screen on here?
At the very top, you should have like a little red button that says stop share.
Oh, there we go. I see it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so we've done that, and I just any other questions related to filtering and sorting? A lot of people don't realize all the options that sorting and filtering have, and so I like to make sure people know those. Okay.
Well,
Go ahead.
what we haven't really covered it yet, and I haven't really talked about it other than just generically. But what effect does the column data type? You know how you can do general, you can do date, you can do number, currency, whatever.
Mhm.
Does that have any effect on things? It seems like if you,
It does.
yeah,
It does. So like, especially like date definitely has a big fit. Like that's why I was mentioning earlier, like depending on how it's formatting and how it's looking at it, it will look at it as a date or it won't. Also, sometimes when I'd have to have it set up just right, but sometimes when you're working with just regular numbers like this, it'll, if it's as a text file, if it's being worked as with text, it's actually a text format. It will sometimes, Excel will ask you, do you want it to be looked at as a number or not? And you can choose all items that look like numbers, make them look like numbers, review them as a number. And then it kind of changes its stuff up. I'd have to have it set up just right to be able to show that to you. And I don't really, usually it just randomly happens to me. So
no, that's
but
fun. I guess the point I want to make is that it's often worth the overhead to go through and make sure that regardless of the tool you're using, like we've done Python programming, which it just guesses what data type, if it's going to be string or numeric. But in Excel, it's worth getting the data type assigned, because the formatting and some of the formulas and whatnot behave more reliably if the tool knows what the data is that you're working with. Like no and yes, it seems like there's a data type for that in Excel. I know there's a Boolean type in programming languages, but it seems like there's something in Excel where if you get the data type right, the the automagic seems to work more reliably, like recommended charts and pivot tables and whatnot. Anyway, it seems like it's worth getting the data type set up correctly while you're doing your wrangling.
yes, it is. I do agree on that. Especially when it comes to like the date. The date is a big deal. And then if you're wanting, depending on what right, I do agree with that, if that makes sense. Now, like this percentage issue right here, it probably would look better if I had already had a percent on it. But it's not it's not set up the same way. So I'd have to set it up that way. It has to be 0.06 or whatever. So, but right now I'm just, if that makes sense. But yes, depending on what you're working on and what you're wanting to present and how you're using it, I would recommend putting the data, making sure the formatting is done properly. That is correct. Okay, so I'm going to recommend, I know we're like 5 minutes early for the next break. Could we go ahead and
breaking
do a little bit of break?
Breaking early is never against the rules.
Okay. I was gonna say, I feel like I'd go over if I continue talking. So
yeah, let's go 10:25. I always use cell phone time.
okay.
Somehow my computer seems to stay on track too. I don't know if it grabs the timing signal from the internet or what, but anyway, 10:25, resume. Welcome back to hour 3, November 9th.
I was wondering if you were going to have something funny to say this time. So
yeah, I'm out. Sorry.
All right. So I mentioned earlier a couple of things related to formatting. And so I wanted to add a couple of more comments about a few things. One thing to clean up Excel spreadsheets, data, et cetera, like I said, is to format auto fit column width. It is a pet peeve of mine to receive a document where I cannot see all the data on there. However, if you only highlight, and this is if it's not in a table format, okay, and he showed you how to do table formatting, which is totally different than just using the worksheet itself. So if you're using the worksheet itself and you only highlight the header, when you click format auto fit column width, it will only fit that width, that column to that header. So like in this case, city, the word city is smaller than the size of the cities. So if you click it, it'll make that look horrible. Just so you know. So make sure you're highlighting the entire data set, and click that auto fit width. Okay. Another thing related to formatting in making changes, etc., is how to merge cells. I don't know if that's been brought up or if you even understand how that works. Most people just use that click, merge, and center. I'm going to show you. I'm going to copy this and show you over on H. Oops, sorry. And I'm going to unclick. See, right now, merge is highlighted. I'm going to unclick it. So this information, this line, let's look at this sentence itself. This sentence right now is only in the H cell. Okay. If I want it to stay, let's say I might want it this big, but I don't want it to be bigger than this. I don't want it to be longer, but I might want it, higher. One thing you can do is you can wrap the text. Okay. So up here near in the alignment area, it says wrap text. You click on the cell that you're wanting to wrap and click wrap text. It wraps it into where it's all in one cell. Okay. Now, the key with wrap text, I have a hard time with it sometimes. You need to know what is wrapped and where the information is and how much room you have. So you can click auto fit row height and see what happens. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But right now, this is wrapped. Okay, so it's all in one cell. However, let's say you wanted it to actually go across a couple of rows, kind of like this one right here. I have made it go all the way across a couple of columns, sorry, not rows, but columns, a few columns, and made it merged in that one. But this one is not, this was only wrapped. So let's say I want it go across a few of them, and let's say I don't want it to be centered, okay? I can highlight H and I and go up here where it says merge and center, use the little drop down arrow and click merge across. If you use merge across, you can highlight a whole set of lines like that and merge across. If you merge and center, it brings everything to one cell. So be very, very careful with that. And then you can also unmerge by just clicking the actual thing. I show this because some people don't realize the opportunity they have with merge and unmerge. So I'm going to show this real quick. I'm going to unhide all of these. And see, these are all merged, and they're merged with the merge across. I highlighted them all at one time. And I went from one area to another, and then I clicked merge across. Okay, not merge and center. So just wanted you to see that. And I'm also hiding and hiding, and I don't use that very much, but I kind of have to with this situation. So we're clicking H and I. I'm choosing the cells I want it to be merged across on, and merge across, and then it does it. Okay. Just showing that little information for you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete that off and unmerge it. Another thing I want to talk about really quick is conditional formatting. Okay, so conditional formatting is very useful when you're looking at different kinds of data. One of the things I use it the most for is looking at data to see if anything's duplicated. There are some times that I want to remove duplicates without even looking at what's in there. I just want multiple ones of them gone. And then other times I want to look at the data and see which ones are duplicated before I remove them. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to look at data that's duplicated, how to highlight them and easier to look at. And then I'll show you in a little bit how to remove them different ways. Okay. So conditional formatting, we're going to highlight all of the name column, because that's going to be the ones that I probably have duplicated. Click conditional formatting, highlight cell rules, then go all the way down to duplicate formats. It'll give you an option. If you're somebody that's doing multiple duplications or multiple things, you might want to change the colors. You can. So we're looking at duplicate. So it's either unique or duplicate. So you choose, usually I choose duplicate. It's already chosen for you. And then I choose what color I want it to be. Like I said, I'm not doing a lot of conditional formatting and color marking. So the standard red, light red field with dark red text works for me. But if you're doing a bunch of highlighting or changing in your file, you might want to choose something, a different color, different option. Okay. And you can do that right there and then hit OK. Now for me, I can look at this file and see, these are the same. If these were not set up alphabetical order, my suggestion would be to do this. I'd go back up to the filter, click it, filter by color, and I would choose my color of the items that are duplicated. And that's when I start looking. I would look at it. Is the exact same information there? Do I need to take some information from one row to put it on the other? That kind of thing. So in this situation, this is a very short list. If it was me and all I needed to do was clean this up, I would go row by row and delete the one of them out. Just right click and delete. And then the other one, that doesn't turn red. It turns no color, meaning there's not a duplicate of it. Now, if for some reason you delete one and you have one that's still duplicate, like it's still red, that probably means there's another duplicate somewhere in your row with the same information. So please make sure you pay attention to that. Kind of like Carol Idle here is separated out. So if these were not together closer, I would alphabetize and then show the duplicates so they're all all together. If that makes sense. Okay, I'm gonna clear from here. And I'm going to go ahead and remove the duplicates on these by highlighting the table. And this is an actual different type of job, if that makes sense. So instead of filtering and looking at them, I'm going to go to the data tab at the top. And over to the right, by text to columns where we were earlier to separate out the text, you can click remove duplicates. Now, this is where it can get complicated. It depends on your data. It depends on what you're working on. So when I teach it, this is the critical thinking part. You need to decide, do you remove the entire row if it's duplicated? Is that what I'm looking for? Is that not what I'm looking for? Maybe I'm only looking for, is only these certain things the same? If these certain things are the same, then I remove the information. So that's what these check marks are for. So I always try to make sure my data has headers if I include the headers in the information. If I don't include the headers, you can unclick it. But what happens is it looks like this if you don't click my data has headers. It changes this information to column names and not the headers. So I keep that click, that helps. And then I make that decision. What am I looking at? How am I looking at it? And what do I need to remove? And depending on your situation, like I said, you might need to keep Joe Bob twice on there, or in this case, Neil in I don't even know how to say the last name. You might have to keep them on there twice because of whatever you're working on. Okay, because you don't want to remove duplicates for everything, depending on what you're working on. So you can unselect all, you can select all, and if you select all, it's looking at everything. So is everything the same? If everything is the same, it's going to remove it. If you unselect all and you only choose name, no matter what the other information is, if the name is the same, all of it gets all of that second group gets erased. Okay. So if not everything's the same, when you have everything selected, like let's say the city was different, then it wouldn't erase it. Okay, so let me show you that real quick. I'm going to show you that. So let's just try this person here and change it to Lowell. Okay, we're going to highlight again. Go back up to remove duplicates. I'm going to remove all duplicates if all items are the same. And then I'm going to hit OK. All right, and then hit OK. And you're going to see these are still my duplicates over here. Filter by color. We'll look at it. So these two people, this person here has two different city names. This person has two different city and state names. And then John Cleese has a yes and a no that's different. So when it looked at it, it looked at everything and erased everything that was the same for the multiple rows. So the second row of everything. And it looks at it as the first row is the important row. So if for some reason you need to, you know, all your answers, and that's another thing. So like if all your answers, you want everybody that was answered yes marked first, and then the no's would be the ones that you removed, then you would sort for the yeses to be on top, and then it would remove any of them that were no's. If that makes sense, that were duplicated. So I'm going to show you again. Does anybody have any questions about that yet while I'm going through this? It can be complicated sometimes. Okay. So I'm going to go back through here, highlight the whole thing again, remove duplicates. And in this case, I just want that second person gone. It doesn't, that second level of that person gone. So we're going to remove unselect all and only click the name. So now it's only looking at the name. And if there's more than one name, that second line of that person's name, that second name version will be erased. So once again, if you have multiple lines and they have multiple information on it, you have to sort to get your information the way it needs to be, the best one at the top, and then it'll erase the second set. Okay. Hit OK. And now you'll see, we'll sort to see, and we don't have any options of filter by color because we don't have any duplicates anymore with the names at least. Any questions about that?
That works really well.
Okay. That's one of my favorite things I use a lot, but it is one of those things, like I said, you have to really think about what you're doing or you will erase your data and you'll regret it. So just be careful. Okay. Next thing, let's talk about more conditional formatting related to that. So that was the duplicate version. Also, now we have conditional formatting still on the table, okay, on the page. Conditional formatting will drag down your Excel spreadsheet. It will make it bigger. So if I saved it right now, it would probably it'll be a lot larger. So if you don't have to save it with conditional formatting, I highly recommend you not do it. If for some reason you are saving your file, you notice it's larger, and you remember using conditional formatting, but you don't need it, you can go back and remove it. So you'll go back to Home and Conditional Formatting, and you can clear rules. You can clear rules for the entire spreadsheet, or you can clear rules for that specific selected cells. In this case, we don't need the cells to have a duplicate item in it, format on it, so we can clear it. And so that's gone. Now, one of the neat things about conditional formatting is that's how you can show someone levels of things. So like how, like sales and who's doing better with sales and who's not. So we're going to highlight the sales column. We're going to go to conditional formatting, and we're going to look at color scales. Okay. And there are different options here based off what you're wanting. So in this situation, in my mind, when I think about sales, green is best, red is low. You need to get better, you know. So we're going to click, I'm going to click this one right here. It says green, white, red color scale. Click it. And you can see that the higher numbers are green and the lower numbers are red. In this case, you can sort, largest to smallest, and you can see how that color scale goes. Okay. In this situation, you know, that's not what you're going to do. You're probably going to have it alphabetized over here, and then your boss or whoever's going to review it's going to be like, ah, those greens look good or whatever. Those reds don't look good. So those are options. Those are nice options there. Back to conditional formatting. You can also add icon sets depending on what you want to add it to. You can click that one. See, it looks a little funny, so we'll open it up. And so the reds, of course, are the lower numbers, are getting X's. The check marks are on the greens, and then the exclamation points are in that middle range. They're not the best because they're getting warnings. So you can also adjust that. So let's look at the commission. Those have simple numbers, so that's helpful. You can go to, you can make data bars on there as well. See how that formats? It's kind of neat. Color scales, like I said, you can do different colors. You can, and you can make the colors. So I'm going to show you how to fix that real quick. Let's do the other way. Let's do green. Okay. So back up to conditional formatting. We're going to manage rules. And I'm highlighting the group that I'm working on. So it's still highlighted. And then you can choose your rules. Okay, right now, this is the color scale. Let's edit the rule. And you could choose your colors. So what's the highest color? Let's say I don't like green. Let's make it purple. What's the lowest color? Let's say I'd prefer it to be like a different color purple, like a light purple, and never have the white. You could do that. You can also adjust it to 3-color scale. Include a different color in the middle if you want to. You can format different ways. Okay. So let's go back to 3-color scale, and you can do percentile. So you could do numbers if you want to, or you could do percent. So you could do the actual number is, let's say the actual number is 4 is my middle point. And let's change the color to more colors and there's a light color, a darker color, and then the darker. Okay, and then hit OK. And it says stop if true. Not really sure. I'd have to look that up a little bit more. You could duplicate the rule and have it other colors. You could delete the rule. You can add a new rule. And you can also change what area you're looking at. So if you don't want it in that area, the column F, you could change it to G. Okay. So we're going to apply, and that's what it's going to look like. Like I said, 4 is going to be that middle point. So that'll be that middle color. You could do a totally opposite colors. That's where you could choose like the red or the green and then a different color in the middle. Okay. Another cool thing is, let's see, I'm going to remove these, Control Shift down, and then go back to conditional formatting, clear rules, clear rules. If you get really good at conditional formatting, you could just highlight and then decide your own rule, you know, create your own rule if you're, you know, you like specific colors and different ideas. But one thing we're going to do here, Control Shift down, is we're going to do top and bottom. So you can actually do the above average, the bottom 10%, the bottom 10 items, top 10%, top 10 items, etc. So that's kind of neat that you can do that in the group. So let's do that with commission. Conditional formatting, top 10 items. They're highlighted. You could choose. You do red text. You can choose green with dark green. You can choose yellow. So those are your top 10 items. You can also choose the top 5 items, 4, 3, 2, etc. Okay. All right. Trying to think. We showed the color scales, icon sets. Any questions about conditional formatting? Like I said, the only thing I would make sure is if you don't have to have it, if you're just using it to kind of find something, I'd remove it so it doesn't drag down. It doesn't make your Excel spreadsheet slower. Okay. All right. Okay, next thing related to slowing down your Excel spreadsheet. So I actually had a coworker call me the other day. She was like, my Excel spreadsheet is going so slow. And what had happened is somebody copied and pasted a table. And instead of copying and pasting just the information that she needed, they did the entire spreadsheet onto a new spreadsheet. And one tip I want to give y'all is when you do that, what happens is it pulls over a lot of information you don't need. And so if you notice that your Excel is dragging, it's taking longer, and if you go to your file folder and you see that it's actually a pretty large number, taking up a lot of data, I would just copy and paste your Excel, your table or your information into another spreadsheet and delete the bad spreadsheet, and it will save it again, and it probably will clean it up. It happens all the time. I'll have one that goes from, I don't know, 500 kilobytes and then it goes up to like 20,000 randomly because of something that was pasted wrong. So just be aware of that. I know you're IT people, so you probably know that, but just wanted to give y'all that tip. Okay. Anybody have any questions about any of that yet?
Doing good.
Okay. All right. So I do want to go over a little bit of printing. I know that sounds weird, but one of the things about printing is a lot of people that use Excel very well, they don't process and think about the fact that they're sending the items to someone that might not use Excel and would prefer to print the item. So I'm going to kind of show you some options on how to print things and set it up to be printed. And it doesn't have to actually be printed, but like to be put into a PDF, because a lot of times you don't want someone messing with the data. You want to present it. And so a PDF would be the best option. So I'm going to show you that for a minute. So let's start with this file here. I'm going to unhide these. Oop, I hit them all. Sorry. I'm going to unhide, not hide. Okay. And we're going to go up to View. We're going to go to Page Break Preview. Okay. Now, right now, you're looking at this, and it's showing that all of this can fit on one page, which is great. That means I can print this, and it will show up on one page, and I had a copy of it. But that's exactly what I needed to do. If someone wanted to be able to look at this, now I will say when you're looking at a page break view, don't look at it literally. Like you see how these words are kind of hidden? That's not what always happens when it's printed. It just means that all of this, as of this point, how you have it set up will actually fit inside of a one-page document. Okay. We're going to go to Page Layout. Oops, sorry, go back to Page Preview, sorry, and then go to Page Layout up here at the top, sorry, Page Layout tab. You can do a print area and set a print area. So let's say you're only wanting someone to print this area here, and it's not something they're choosing, it's something you want to make sure that they're printing, okay, instead of you choosing. So of course you can always choose something and then click selection, print selection only. But in this case, if someone's wanting to print something specific, this is what you want them to print. So you can go to print area, set print area, and you're only printing that area instead of the actual data. So you're printing the instructions instead of the data. You can clear print data and see it pops back up. Let's see, go to margins, custom margins. You can adjust your margins to be a little bit easier. You can also set it horizontally and vertically inside of the Excel, inside of a piece of paper. The page You can adjust it just like it's kind of a Word document type thing. Header and footer, these are very helpful when you're trying to make sure if you have multiple spreadsheets on a document and you want someone, if they're printing it to PDF and they're wanting to share it, to make sure that they do it properly and they share the information. You can choose a custom header. You can choose, you can name it a certain way and it's already saved. So when you send it to someone, if they go to try to print it or turn it to PDF, then they can't, then it's set up the way you want it to be. So it's kind of more of a protection on your side, if that makes sense, in case you send something and someone starts questioning, why did you send it that way or another? You can name it by the name of the item you have. You can rename your sheet and name it by the name of the sheet. Footers the same way. You can choose, page 1 of 1 of that specific item, etc. Here, this one right here says the name of this spreadsheet, confidential, page 1, and then I'll say page 2, on the other one. So you can hit OK there. Also, one thing that's helpful for some situations, if like with me, it's not set up as a table, it's just sitting in an Excel spreadsheet. So if I wanted someone to be able to read a table like item, I would probably add the grid lines. And the grid lines add those little lines so it looks a little bit easier to read and follow on a piece of paper or on a PDF, because of course we're looking at grid lines on Excel all the time, but when you pull it over, it doesn't have it, So that kind of thing. You can also do repeat rows at top. So if for some reason you have multiple a whole lot of data and you want that header row repeating at the top of each page, then you click on there and then highlight that row to repeat at the top of each page. So you can't lose it. Same thing with columns. If you have columns on the left that repeat all the time, that can be done as well. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to remove that and then hit OK. We're going to go to File and go to Print. And you can do all of this from Print as well. So what I just did, you could go to Print Setup and do it. And that's where all the headers and margins and sheet information are. Usually that's where I go most of the time anyways. You could change your margins here, if it's how it's oriented, etc. Let's see. So right now it's marked Print Active Sheets. You can print your entire workbook, but I will tell you, you have to go sheet by sheet to make sure your workbook is set up the way you need it to be printed properly. If I clicked print entire workbook right now, I guarantee you I would have like 500 pages of one column printing on one page because I don't have the whole workbook set up to be printed. So just be aware of that. Trying to think what else on that. So also these items here fit all rows to one page, fit sheet on one page, no scaling, fit all columns on one page, etc. So depending on what you click, if you don't have that page, that print area set up properly, when you start clicking these other items, it definitely ends up making it where like it could go differently. If that makes sense. It won't look the same. Okay. Any questions about that?
Anyone?
Do you all know how to save it as a PDF as well?
That's what I was going to ask you,
Okay,
Mary Kate. And I've seen the same thing. I try to never print with Excel because of all the problems that you mentioned. It's the most cantankerous. You don't, WYSIWYG stands for what you see is what you get, but I think Excel missed that lesson in software school because it seems like a lot of times you get way more than what you see.
Right.
So I was wondering if you've got something set up pretty that's starting to look like a report. And you haven't gone all as far as putting it into Word and everything, but you just want to get, maybe a pivot table and a few charts to somebody, but they don't need to manipulate the data at all. Yeah, what does that look like? What do you, as far as saving it as another format and getting it to somebody that's
Okay.
prettier?
Let me go to print. Okay, so I went ahead and set this as the item that we're going to print. So as you can see, I have a header and a footer on there, so it kind of looks a little bit more professional. You can adjust, put your name on it, your job, their company, or whatever on there as well. And then at this point, let's say this is what I want it to look like to go to somebody, and I don't want it to be an Excel version. At this point, I would just go up here to printer, and then you usually will have Microsoft print to PDF, or you'll have Adobe to PDF, Adobe Pro version. Sometimes you'll have, like, I don't have Adobe Pro on my computer here at my office, at my house, but at my office I do. So there's like add-ins that go into Microsoft sometimes. So there might be an Adobe add-in that's already on your Excel, but you can just print this way. And when you print it, click and it starts to save it. And you just save it. So it's printing it what it looked like there, if that makes sense. Is that what you were asking?
Sure. And if that's how you use Excel way more than I do. Is that how you do it versus
That
like file
is
save as PDF? Is there any
right.
difference?
And sometimes there is a difference. Sometimes there isn't. I think the print too, there isn't much of a difference. I know that if you use the Adobe add-in, there is. Sometimes you can choose a few a little bit more special items on how it's actually presented. So like this one's save as, and you can save as, I'm missing it right there. So PDF. And now it says more options. Okay. So if you do save as, then you can choose, options here. You can do a little bit. You could do the entire workbook. But you could do that with print too, print to PDF. You can do PDF/A compliant, which I am not good at what that is. I'm assuming it has something special. You'd have to know more about that to understand.
Yeah, I think it's accessibility. Something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. And then ignore print areas. That means if it would do whatever it wants to make it into a PDF instead of what you're wanting to do. So, but yeah, you could do it either way there. I know the add-ins usually, like I said, the add-ins have more options for adjusting. That's even with Word. If you have it as an add-in that pops up here that says Adobe Pro or whatever. Any other questions? And I hope that answered that.
Yep.
There we go. Okay. I hate looking at it this way. I'll always go back to normal. It drives me insane to look at it the other way. Now, another thing some people don't know much about, since we're talking about some randomness, is freeze panes. You can freeze certain panes. So as you're moving through a set of data, you can always see the headers. You can freeze the first columns. You can freeze the top row. Usually it's the top row with my situation, or you can freeze certain ones. So I'm going to freeze this specific one, freeze panes. And then as I move, actually it did the top one, didn't it? Did it do that? Let's see. It still didn't do it. Usually it's, let me see if I do this. All right, so highlight the top row, freeze panes, freeze top row, and then as you move it, the top row stays still. I don't, like I said, normally I don't do my tables in the middle. It's usually at the very top, so it makes life a lot easier. So, but as you move it, now the only thing I will say is, so I have a bad habit of doing control home or control arrow up, I think is what I do. control arrow up. Yeah, okay. So control home will take you all the way back to the, the second row after that freeze pane. It brings you all the way up. But if you happen to be someone that uses control arrow up to get you all the way to the top, as you can see, that didn't work. So I'm right here, control arrow up, it didn't roll it all the way up. So you have to pay attention if you decide to freeze your top row, that you're getting all the way back up to the top of your data when you're working on it, or you will be irritated with yourself if you're trying to work on all of it. If that makes sense. So, but it is very handy for many reasons. So just letting y'all know that. What else? Also, I'm just going to go over a couple of random things as well. So review is kind of like the review on Word. It also has a spelling. As you all know, Excel does not tell you when you have misspelled something. So if you are about to present this to somebody, I highly recommend you check your spelling. There is a chance that somehow that one's not misspelled. There is a chance that I have something misspelled in here. That's someone's name. So ignore. Apparently I did okay. So yeah, I would highly recommend you check your spelling, because it doesn't tell you that you've misspelled and or the or it. So be careful on that. Going through here real quick to see if there's anything else I can show you before moving on to the next stuff. Like I said earlier with the functions and formulas, I was going to this insert formula and function area, but you can definitely look up more items right here if you're looking for something specific in a specific area. Okay. And then page layout. You can do a lot of themes and colors. I don't know if you've done any of that before. If you do, if you want to be shown any of that, just let me know. I can add that to Thursday's item. One cool thing is you can add a background to your Excel spreadsheet. It's very annoying for some people. Other people think it's fun. So you can also add that as a background. It could just be one picture and it just completely goes over the entire spreadsheet. So it can also be repetitive. Let's see. We're going to go over pivot tables and charts on Thursday, just so you know. Trying to think. No, that's good there. And then we've gone over a bunch of this right here. So that's good. So any questions about the printing items? Anything else that somebody wants to know about printing, or any of the things that we just went over? Okay. All right, Donna, I can go on to another thing, or do you want to take a break a little bit early again? Or how do you want to, or I could start having them do a little bit of the review and then do some more later.
I think we should go for a little bit longer if there's
Okay.
one more topic that fits.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to show y'all how to match items from one area to another. Down here at the bottom, there are two spreadsheets. One says VLOOKUP, one says VLOOKUP2. VLOOKUP, so VLOOKUP and match your items that are functions that I use a lot. I use VLOOKUP more than match. And what it does is it looks at two different sets of data. And I'm going to actually, I'm going to copy this to itself. So I don't know if you've ever done this, but you can copy a sheet. So I'm going to show that real quick to you. You'll right click on the tab, go to move or copy. You have to click create a copy, or you don't create it. If you don't make a copy, you're moving it. And then I'm going to copy it to a new workbook and then hit OK. And I'm going to move it over. So I have two. So you should be able to see two Excel spreadsheets on your on the system right now. And the idea is that I have two spreadsheets, and I need to know if
I'm seeing your original.
Oh, you're still on one.
Large
Okay,
data file, because I think you're sharing that program as opposed to your entire screen. I think.
There we go. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
Cool.
All right, now you should see two. Did it work?
Yeah, and there's like a green circle following your mouse around. That's different.
Was it not doing that earlier?
That's the first I'm seeing of it. How about you guys?
Oh no, man, I've had that on the whole time. I guess somehow because it wasn't the screen. I'm sorry, I didn't know that. Okay, so VLOOKUP, and like I said, with VLOOKUP and match, what you're doing is you're going to be looking at two different spreadsheets or two different sets of items of information, but they have to have at least one item, one column that is related to each other. Okay, so in this situation, this group of people have the IDs, and their IDs should relate to each other. Okay, and I want to know if this group is on this spreadsheet over here. Okay, so if I want to know if these are on this spreadsheet, what I can do is I could do two things. I can do match. So I'm just going to make a new column and do match. And what I will do is equals match tab. You have to look up the item that you're looking for on the same row that you're on. So I'm going to click up that special ID. I'm going to put a comma, and then I'm going to look over here and for that same ID information. Okay, so I'm looking in that specific the other spreadsheet over here. You don't click anywhere else. You're clicking on that that column, and then you hit comma. And if you see over here, it's showing less than, exact, or greater than. And we are looking for the exact match on those IDs. Okay, so we're going to do a 0 and then end it with a parentheses and enter. Okay, what this is going to bring up is the line that ID is on the other spreadsheet. Okay, so I'm going to double click here, let the formula go all the way down. And I'm going to highlight A through E. And I'm going to turn the filters on because this is where I'm going to find out. I'm going to look to see if there's anything that has an NA. If it has an NA, that means they're not on the other spreadsheet. Okay. So this is telling me that on row 7 on this spreadsheet, the customer with the ID 106 is on that. So we're going to go over to this other spreadsheet. Turn the filters on to make it a little bit easier. And we're going to go to row 7 here. And customer ID 106, Stamina Corp is the same. Okay. So that's telling me what row it is on. Okay. So I'm going to clear that filter.
And if it's blank,
it should be an NA.
It didn't. Oh, okay. If it's an NA, then it did not find it in the left-hand table.
Correct. That is correct. If it's an NA, it did not find it in that set of table, which is helpful because then you decide if that's how it was supposed to be or not, or if you need to figure out why.
Gotcha.
That kind of thing. Sorry about that. Okay, so that's helpful. A lot of times you're just looking to see, do I have all of my lines in the right place or not, my info? And if not, then this is what this is for, is to kind of help that. So the related to that is VLOOKUP. Now VLOOKUP gets a little bit more complicated. Match is looking at one item, the ID and the ID, and comparing, and then and giving you a row number. VLOOKUP gives you an opportunity to look at multiple items and include them. So instead of taking the sector and typing it in over here on the other spreadsheet, you can actually pull that in because it matches with the special ID. And I keep saying the word special ID because it has to be unique. There has to be something that tells them the difference. So something could even be the first, middle, and last name of a person, but it has to be all spelled properly. So that's another thing. So a number ID is easier to work with than a text ID or a letter ID, if that makes sense. especially when it comes to people's names, because if you have a list of something that that has been brought to you that is provided by someone typing it up, they might have mistyped a name. And then if someone is bringing you something from a system that was already inputted properly and comparing them, you might not be able to get the best comparison. Does that make sense? Usually number IDs or special unit identifiers like a number is a little bit easier to not mess up. It's there for a reason. But one way you can create a unique ID if you don't have a number ID is to add, like, in this case, it's a little bit different, but if okay, how about this? Let's say there was multiple, that you had the column A and you have a column B, and like here, how do I say this? It's kind of complicated, but let's say you want to combine them to make it even more unique. Maybe you have multiple 141s Honeywell ACIs on your columns. So, but if you combine them, it might clean it up a little bit better with adding something else. So you might do that and add the technology to it. So you might have multiple columns combined to make that a special ID, if that makes sense. So I'm going to show you how to use VLOOKUP now. So right now at this point, we know that this spreadsheet, everyone on this spreadsheet is on this spreadsheet. Okay. Before we move on, I'm going to make sure that everyone on this spreadsheet is on this spreadsheet, the opposite. Okay. I'm going to do that by doing the same thing, equals match over to the ID, comma, go back to column A, comma, we're going to use 0 for exact and in parentheses. And then we're going to make sure that they're, and as you see, we don't have that. So I'm going to go down to the NA, hit OK. And so all of these are not on this spreadsheet. Okay. In this case, doesn't mean anything to me, but if it was my data and I want them to both be on the same ones of both, I would start trying to figure out why they're not on there. Okay. So that means most likely when we try to pull the sectors from over here, it won't show up. It'll be NAs. So we're going to clear that data again. I'm going to delete off those. And now over here on this spreadsheet on the column D, I'm going to highlight it so y'all see a little bit better. Column D is a sector. And I'm going to pull that sector over to this spreadsheet so I know, so I see what the sector is instead of having to try to figure it out by copy and pasting or putting them in order and all that stuff. So we're going to use VLOOKUP. Okay. So with VLOOKUP, you're not looking just at the IDs, you're actually looking at multiple columns at one time. But your special ID has to be the first column in your array. Okay. So we're going to do equals VLOOKUP. Your lookup value is the first, is your special ID of that row. Okay. We're going to comma, and then we're going to go to your other area of data. And you have to start with that special ID. This is your table array. And then highlight to at least the column you're wanting to pull. You can highlight multiple columns. You can go past that D if you want to, but you have to go at least to the column of information that you're wanting to pull. Okay. So I've highlighted to D. You're going to comma, and now you're going to count from your special ID to that column that you're wanting to pull over. We're going to count columns. So we're going to go A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, and D is 4. And I didn't mean to click on them, so ignore that. Don't click on them. So we started with the ID, we highlighted our table array, and then we counted from our special ID to the item, the column that we're wanting to pull over. So now we're going to put in that 4. So that's what we're going for up here. And now we're going to comma again, and then it's a true or false. True is approximate, false is that exact. We're doing exact. So we're going to do false in parentheses, and it pops up. So then you double click, drop it down. And so this is where I'm going to show you a couple of new things. So the 0, if it pops up a 0, this is the only issue that occurs sometimes. If it pops up a 0, that means the file that you're pulling it from, the data that you're pulling it from, has that ID in it, but that column didn't have information in it. Okay, so that's where you go back and you would erase that 0. Okay, you can type in the word blank or whatever, but you would erase that 0. And then you also have the NAs. And the NAs are the ones that are not on the spreadsheet at all. Okay, so I know it's 11:15. If y'all want to take a break and then we come back and do some more work on VLOOKUP, we could do that.
How much more you think you got today versus when you want to break and do new topics for, you want to finish out here in the next 20 minutes or so, or?
This is really one of the things I was going to do next Thursday. On Thursday, we went so fast through everything I was going to do today. So, I mean, I could finish this and then we can review, or everybody can just do some practicing. It's up to y'all.
Yeah, there's a few things that you've finish what you got, and then I want to make sure that everybody is thinking of this in the next segment of the course, which is when we go into relational databases and the way you join tables and everything. So go ahead and finish up what you got for today, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, sounds good. All right. So so like I said, the NA here means that they're not on the spreadsheet at all. So not only are they don't have a sector there, the ID is not on here at all. So that's where you would have to determine why is that, and is that important or not for your own situation. Now, related to that, one thing I didn't go on over earlier, and it's one thing I've not really done very much of, you can actually format the many different functions or formulas to include your own version of, if you have an error, this is what it will say. Okay, so at the beginning of the VLOOKUP item, you can actually put equals if error in the parentheses, and then you leave your VLOOKUP formula, put a comma at the end of it, and then add not on table or something, and then end it. So we're going to redrag it, and all of those NAs will pop up not on table instead of NAs. The other NAs are, yeah, the bad ones at the bottom. So instead of it being NA, you're actually putting something in that error location instead. So it depends on how you like to work. Like adding the F error is a little bit more extra, but actually if you're trying to make it easier on yourself, you could do it, especially if you're not wanting to do a lot of adjustments after you're putting the formula in place. For me, when I do this, I would copy and paste this and get rid of those zeros, and then that's what I need. I don't, depending on your situation, might be different. I use VLOOKUP probably daily because I'll add like date of birth to people's lists. I'll add addresses to people's information, you know, that kind of thing. Added stuff from one Excel spreadsheet to another. Does anybody have any questions specifically about VLOOKUP or match? And there are more. I can go over it again in another spreadsheet if you've never used it before.
Anybody before I go, you please. Okay. VLOOK, I had heard of VLOOKUP, saw, a YouTube video on it, never messed with it. So I want to make sure I get the counting the columns. When you were when you were counting out the destination, the thing that you were looking up, the lookup table, which was our right-hand spreadsheet, you start counting with the actual lookup column is 1.
Correct.
You don't
So one is the column.
is the column
and
you're
then-
actually looking up, you're referencing, and then you tell it it's the 4th column
Well,
that you're actually pulling the value of.
right. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Depends on how you look at it. It's a very difficult thing to try to explain because you have to make sure the person that you're teaching understands, your processing of what you're thinking too. And this can get crazy. I have reports that I work on that I pull over. I'm trying to make sure of something, and it could be, ZZ's, 2 Z's on it, or it could be BBB, BBBA or something column. So I have to count, but I will recommend that you just move that special ID code column. You just copy and paste it somewhere further down closer. It makes your life a little bit easier if you just move it.
Yeah, exactly. And in database speak, you call that a lookup table. Generally speaking, you might only have a couple of columns. You'd have the ID of the sector, and you would call that sector ID, and then you'd have the sector name, and you'd call that column sector name, and then you just link it together. Like, are you SQL?
I am
SQL
not
savvy and all? It's amazing to me how much you can do in a spreadsheet that is that's a hard way to do it. Oh, that's so but it is what it is, and a lot of times you don't have access to the underlying SQL prompt.
Yes.
But some of the folks here do. So it all depends on what access you have, what tools you have, what the data looks like.
That is the biggest thing, is what does the data look like, and what do you have to do to get it from one place to another? And instead of typing or pulling it a different way, or that is the biggest thing. And that's why it's so hard to teach Excel to different groups of people, because everyone is going to use it differently. And of course, in y'all's area, I know some of what you're probably doing, but not a lot. So I'm just guessing on what you might need it.
No, this is good. You're doing great, Mary Kate. What the tool does and how it works in Excel, and that's exactly what we need. So are you good for the day? You ready?
Yeah,
At a
unless somebody has
Um,
another question. The only thing I was going to do is just kind of show what I'd like them to practice on. That'd
Sure.
be it. Okay. So I'm going to exit out this other version. Let's save. Oh, let me show you. And because I didn't, how did I do that? It should have freaked out right then. I bet it does in a minute. I just closed that other spreadsheet, so I would think that it would now have NAs everywhere. There. Anyways, okay. So on the main practice tab, if you unhide everything, it has a lot of little sentences, a little instructions. And what I would recommend for practicing, my Excel's panicking right now. Sorry. What I would recommend for practicing is I would highlight and hide a group of them as much, and then try to start from the beginning, but highlight below. So then you're not having to deal with too many of them. Oh, that's right. I also had. That's what it is. Give me 1 second.
Which tab is it's view? There you go.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, I have things on freeze panes. I think that's what it was. Everything was frozen. Hide. Okay. So yeah, it has instructions. So you go through them. I would start at number 2, 1 and 2, and go through it, and then it will continue. And you can practice. And if you followed along, that's all I was doing, was just kind of showing you what I was working on. The audit formula, you can practice with the, where's it at? Formulas, no, data. The data valid, no formula, sorry. There are trace precedents and show formulas and error checking. You can practice on this one because it does have an error. And then transpose, you can practice with practicing the transpose. It has a couple instructions there to practice with, filtering and things like that. The VLOOKUP one, same. You could do what we just did a little bit ago, and you can also do match to practice it. Match is helpful, like if you're wanting to do something really quick and you're not trying to pull over data. I usually VLOOKUP no matter what. It's just a habit of mine because I use it so often. And then I have this group of information here, these files here at the end. There's a little bit of instructions here that kind of go over filtering and VLOOKUP using those files. They look crazy scary, and that's kind of why I threw them in there, is to kind of give you something with more data to play with. You can use it to filter or play with. Like I said, this is completely fake data, so don't worry. it looks real, but it's not. So anyways, but yeah, that's what I would start with, is main practice, and just practice a little bit. And please, what I would ask is that any questions you have, like if you're practicing and you realize you can't figure it out or it's not working for you properly, when you come back on Thursday, please ask me what that is. Ask me about it, because I will review a lot of this with you on Thursday first thing to make sure that y'all are okay with it. Any questions before we go?
I had a request for Thursday, if it's not too much of a stretch.
Go ahead. What is it?
It's charting. Something I struggle with is adding a column, adding a series, a data series, to a chart after you've created it.
Okay.
And in particular, that stupid switch X and Y on a scatter plot. If you go in the wrong direction, the opposite direction, I've read a tutorial online, I've watched a video, and I'm missing something very basic when it comes to swapping the X and the Y axis on that. But yeah, while you're doing charting, if you could just show the basics of adding a variable, adding a column to a chart after the fact, after you create it.
After you create it. Okay, I could do that.
Cool.
Okay.
And yeah, what I wanted to any questions, guys, before we break until Thursday morning? Anybody? I wanted to make sure that when we cover relational database design, and those of you that are SQL savvy already know this, but you'll see kind of why my head is hurting when we do something like VLOOKUP. And there are instances where you don't have what you're looking up. I'm like, oh, it's because you don't have referential integrity. Oh. Because a database kind of fixes all that. It keeps you from ever having that situation where you have a sector ID without a sector name in the data. That databases kind of evolved, I think, from spreadsheets. And I have seen, as a database developer, I have seen folks that are whizzes with Excel get themselves into a little bit of trouble because a relational database doesn't handle information quite like a spreadsheet does, and the data doesn't lay out quite like it does. So you'll see all of that when we do SQL and relational database design. But first, come back next time, Thursday morning, 8:30. And yeah, take the last hour here to monkey around with all I finally figured out to right click and unhide all the challenge questions. So
related to that, I was going to say, if anybody has, if while you're doing it and something that I thought you already know comes up, please let me know and I'll show you that on Thursday. I just don't know what so I'm trying to do something, trying to figure that out. So
that is the challenge with a group this diverse. The functional areas that they work in are broad, and the variation between comfort with analytical tools is pretty diverse as well. So there is no perfect answer. You can't go too simple or too complex. Somebody will be left behind and somebody will be bored, pretty much no matter no matter how you hit it. Okay, Mary Kate, great, thanks. And we'll see everybody back Thursday morning. And of course, like always, I'll post the recording if you happen to pop in a little late. See everybody
Thank
Thursday
you.
at 8:30. Same link, Mary Kate.
Okay, awesome.
Same,
Thank
same
you.
Zoom link.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.